Okay, I want to do a little video series here on making kitchen cabinets. Um, as part of this, I want to talk about the way my grandpa built kitchen cabinets. So my grandpa, his name was Raymond Adkins, and he was born in 1919, and he passed away in the year 2000. But as a teenager, I got the chance to work with him a little bit. And also, when my dad was alive, I talked to him several times. And he filled me in on some other things that Grandpa did as far as how he built kitchens and how he laid things out. And I guess I'm just doing this partially to document how he did things, but also to show how I do things. So, as you know, there's many different ways to do things. The old saying is, it's your cat, skin him any way you want. But I'm going to show you as we go along all of the ways I know to accomplish the same part of this job. So the first thing we're going to talk about is before we build anything, we need to talk about how to measure everything, and then how to generate some drawings based off of that. It's interesting to note that today we buy kitchen cabinets. We usually go to a cabinet shop to buy kitchen cabinets. But like in my grandpa's day, the carpenter made the kitchen cabinets. Cabinet work in a house was part of the carpentry trade. Not so much anymore. Not so much. Now usually you've got a company that the carpenter may install the cabinets, but he's typically not building them. And years ago, the carpenters built the cabinets. And, that presented its own set of limitations, because carpenters, you have a limited set of tools a lot of times on the job site, especially in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think the last kitchen my grandpa did was in the 80s. So, the time period he worked in, he had a limited tool set. I mean, he had a circular saw, he had a table saw, and a jigsaw. And that was the extent of his power tools. And everything else was just hand tools. But I guess the first thing we'll do is we'll talk about measuring and the two different ways you can measure. Okay, so here's the space where we're going to build this cabinet. And I started this project about a year ago, and this is the last thing I need to do is build this cabinet in this bathroom / laundry room. And we've just been using this table here for the last year or so. My wife will be happy that there's no dirty laundry right now. So these are all clean folded clothes, but this cabinet is going to be 58 inches long and 30 inches wide. So it's a little bit deeper than a normal cabinet. Of course, the cabinet itself will have to be narrower than that. 30 inches wide is going to be the width of the countertop. And of course, you got a toe kick and you've got a reveal under the countertop. So you have to subtract all of that stuff. We'll go over that in the next segment here. But let's talk about how to measure this. And of course, the modern method is really easy. You get a tape measure and you measure this. And that's how I did it, right? Everybody knows what a tape measure is. But, since I'm talking about my grandpa's methods, he didn't have a tape measure. He didn't use a tape measure. In fact, they were invented way after he became a carpenter. And what my grandpa used was one of these things right here. And in fact, this is one of his. It's really loose because he used this. This was probably one of the last ones he had. But this thing's been used a lot. And these are called a folding rule. If you've never seen one of these, that's how they work. They just open up like that. But they have a limitation. You see, these folding rules are only 6 feet long. One time I was talking to my dad and I said, why didn't Grandpa ever use a tape measure? And he said that, you know, a lot of those old timers that my dad worked with my grandpa, and he said a lot of those old timers, they just wouldn't use a tape measure because that was the newfangled thing, and they weren't going to do that. So we've got a limitation of a 6-foot measure. So how do we measure a room? Well, it gets to be a real pain in the butt because you got to make marks and try to do a lot of math and add things together. And actually, the answer is they didn't measure rooms. What my grandpa used is that. And that's called a story stick. And a story stick, of course, is just any scrap of wood that is long enough to do what you needed to do, or long enough to mark the dimensions of a room. And what he would do is he would go in somebody's kitchen with this stick, or actually he would have a number of them, and he might write on this stick, west wall, right? So that's what he would write. And then he would put the stick up, and he'd put it against the wall, and he'd take a pencil, and he would mark on this stick. Say, oh, right here, and he would write, there's the outlet. So, you know, he would put it in here, and he'd make a mark where the outlet's at, and he'd make a mark where the windows were. He'd make marks where the plumbing was at. And then he would take these sticks back to his shop, and he would have the story of that kitchen written out on these sticks. That's why they called it a story stick. And then he could generate a set of drawings based on that and build the kitchen. He did a lot of what I'm going to show you. He built a lot of stuff in place, and that's what we're going to do with this cabinet as well. So, you know, a lot of the times, you know, he would cut certain things to length and bring them to the job site, but a lot of stuff he would just make right on the site. He really didn't really build kitchens in his shop. He would go to somebody's house and build the cabinets right on site. But he would take these story sticks and he would use the sticks to generate the drawings. And in fact, he'd use them to build the cabinets themselves. So, you know, he wasn't using a lot of measuring. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of measuring. Anytime you get to measure out, things go wrong. The best thing to do is take your measurements off of the thing that you're building, or the thing that you're building into, and you'll get a lot more accurate job that way. So that's how my grandpa did it. He used a story stick. We're going to use a tape measure because I'm new school, not old school. Okay, so hopefully this works out. I've got a really hillbilly rig up here so we can kind of see what we're going to design. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to just design a very basic base cabinet. And most of this construction that we're going to use would apply to a wall cabinet as well. Basically, we're just building boxes. So it's a pretty easy construction method. And the one we're going to build is just going to basically kind of look like this. It's going to have a face frame on it, like this. It's going to have some drawers in it. It's going to have a base with a kick. And then it's going to have a countertop that extends out over this. And we know that the countertop is going to be, what did we say it was going to be? 58 by 30. So knowing that information, that gives us enough information to start figuring out what size our cabinet needs to be. Our cabinet's not going to be the same size as our countertop. And the reason is we're going to have a reveal underneath the countertop. We don't want the counter flush with the cabinet. And we also need a toe kick under the cabinet. If you don't put a toe kick on a cabinet, it's going to fatigue you standing in front of it, because you're always going to be standing back a little bit. So you need to have a toe kick under a cabinet in order to make it comfortable to stand in front of. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out how big our cabinet's going to be. Or I should say, we need to figure out the actual width, this part here. We need to figure out what that is going to be. So we've got a 30-inch countertop. And from that, we need to subtract a 1.5-inch reveal underneath it. And we also need to, since we've got a face frame on here, we've also got to subtract that face frame. And that's 3/4 inch. So when we do all that math, so we've got 1.5 and 3/4, that equals 27 3/4 inches. And that is the width of our cabinet here that we're going to build. So this is our face frame, this is our reveal, and that's our countertop. So our cabinet sides, the width of our cabinet sides are going to be 27 3/4 inches. The next thing we'll figure out is the width of our base. So now we're going to take this measurement, 27 3/4, and we need to subtract 2 3/4 inches. And that equals 25 inches. And I didn't come up with this number arbitrarily. I typically do a 2 3/4 inch kick. But probably anything between 2.5 and 3 inches would be just fine. I haven't measured a commercial cabinet in a long time. I remember measuring one that was 2 1/4 inches. But 2 3/4 inches is what I use. So now I know my base frame down here is going to be 25 inches. Okay. What else do we need to figure out? I guess we need to figure out our height. How do we figure that out? So we want this to be 36 inches, and that's basically the standard countertop height. So what we can do is we're going to take 36 inches, and we're going to subtract the countertop that we're going to put on there is going to be 1.5 inches thick. So we got to subtract 1.5 inches. And then we've also got a base here that's made out of 2x4s. And that's 3.5. And that equals 31 inches. So now we've got some basic measurements. And we can start coming up with cut lists and designs based off of that. All right. Let's get rid of this. I guess the best place to start with this design is building the base. And a lot of cabinets have the kick integrated into the plywood cabinet. A lot of commercial actually all commercial cabinets do that. I don't like to do that. It's too complicated. It complicates the process of building the cabinet. I think it's much easier to build a separate base, level it out, and then set the cabinet, which would be a simple box, on top of it. And then just attach the cabinet to the base. I think it's a much better system. It's the exact system my grandpa used, so it's not something I invented. It's a very old method of doing this. So we know our base is going to look like this. It's just going to be, would be a top view. It's just going to be 2 2x4s like this, and one like this, and probably 2 in the middle. So we've got a 58-inch long cabinet, and I've decided that I'm going to have this pull back 1.5 inches from the end of the cabinet. So we're going to make this 56.5 inches long, and we know that this has got to be, let me see, I'm going to look at see what measurement we wrote down. Oh, 25 inches, and then we've got to subtract 3 inches for these. So these pieces in here are going to be 22 inches. So that's our basic base measurements. So we got enough there to build that. Our cabinet, so what we're going to do is, and I'm stingy with plywood. I don't want to use any more plywood than I have to. In fact, I never put backs on my cabinets. I always have the wall be the back for any cabinet I'd make. Twofold reason. One, it wastes space. I know it's not that much space, but it does waste space. And two, it just really does nothing for the cabinet. I have a different way. I'll show you when we talk about upper cabinets, or even this cabinet. You'll see how I stiffen the cabinet up so it doesn't want to move from side to side. So we've got a bottom of our cabinet, and we've got two sides, and then we've got to have something in the middle. And then we're going to have, then we'll end up, right now I'm not sure which method I'm going to use, but then we need to be able to tie the top in here like this. And we'll also do something like this similar on the back of the cabinet. And then that'll allow us to attach a face frame to the front of the cabinet. So this material here, this is the edges of the plywood. So what we've got is we've got two pieces of plywood, and these here are going to be, we already know they're going to be 30 inches long. And we know that the width is going to be 27 3/4. So we've got 2 of those. Then right here in the bottom, we have this piece here that's going to be 58 minus 1.5 inches. So that's 56.5 by 27 3/4. So I guess now the point is we know some basics. So we're going to cut these pieces of plywood and we're going to attach them to the bottom. We're going to figure whether I have enough scrap plywood. The center section of this is really only needed to be there for, well, I mean, I guess it would help it to support the top, but its main reason for being there is to support the drawer slides that are going to go in here. So we've got to figure out this piece, and this piece, and whatever we're doing here in the middle, and we'll figure out how we're going to build this top. There's multiple ways we can do all of this stuff. Some of these things, I don't figure them out until I'm actually building, based on the material I have available. If I was doing this for a customer, I have a pretty standard, I would just do whatever the easiest thing was, and I wouldn't worry as much about being super stingy with every piece of material. But since I'm doing it for myself, I'm going to be as cheap as I can. I'm not going to buy an extra sheet of plywood if I don't have to. So I guess the next thing to do is I guess we'll build our base and we'll get that installed. So that'll be our next video. Thanks. Okay, so here's the materials I have to build the base out of. None of them ideal, but I'm just going through the scrap pile. Like I said, I don't want to buy anything if I don't have to. So I'm just going to use what I have laying around. I've got this piece of, looks like a piece of 2x12. I think I got that out of a dumpster at a construction site. It's 4 feet long. I've got this piece of, looks like a piece of treated, possibly, 2x4. That'll be the front of our base. And then I've got this other scrap of, looks like red pine, and that'll be part of the back of the base. So, or it'll be the pieces in the middle, we don't know. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start, and we'll make the front, and then we'll lay the whole cabinet or the whole base out on the board, and then we'll figure out what we need to do to make the rest of this work out. So we'll go ahead and get the table saw set up here, and we'll get to work. Okay, so now what we need to do, now we've got that cut, we're going to go ahead and lay out this cabinet here, or lay out the cross members in the brace. And I put a mark at the end here to represent the pieces that are going to go like this, one at each end. And then we're going to put 2 more here in the middle. And where we do that doesn't matter that much, but just for fun, we'll go ahead and try to space them evenly. We know this is 56.5, so we need half of 56. So half of 50 is 25, and half of 6 is 3, so that's 28. And then we need to add a 1/4 inch to it, so 28 1/4 inches. That's the center. And then what I like to do is find the center of that. So that would be 14 1/8 inches. And we'll do the same thing here. 14 1/8. And of course we need to do 3/4 of an inch on each side of that. Same over here. And now we can draw in our other cross members. Now, unfortunately, I don't have another piece of lumber here that's 56 1/2 inches long. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take and cut some other wood and put a seam in the middle of my next one. So that's what we're going to do right now. Alright, so now that we've got some lumber cut up, we'll get the face of our base over here, and we'll quickly try to figure out where we're going to cut this at, because we're going to have to make a splice. And I think it'd be best to do it somewhere in here. So we'll splice it right there. We'll cut that, and then we'll cut the other one to length. Alright, I've got some gun nails, paper tape gun nails. I got them tore apart. So I'll go ahead, I guess it doesn't matter which side, start driving some nails here. Not terrible. She's got a little bow in it, but it'll be okay. So there's our completed cabinet base made out of garbage. So this will be the bottom. I've got some kind of busted up junk here. Okay, so here's our base sitting where it goes. And of course this floor, as a lot of floors do, it drops down as you go away from the wall. So, especially in an old house like this. So the floor is not level. It's going downhill when we're coming away from that wall. And we need this base to be perfectly level. And we're not going to care about what we have to do to get it perfectly level, because the front of this base is going to get covered with a piece of pine trim. So any of the shims or whatever crazy thing we have to do to make this base come out level is going to be hidden underneath the cabinet. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have to come up with a solution for this. And what we're going to do is I'm going to attach this to the wall first with a couple of screws that are going to go into the studs. And then I will use wedges that I've cut out of wood and go around the base and get it until it's level. And then I'll make marks on those wedges, and I'll use that to know what size, how thick a shim I need to cut for each area. I'll show you that when we get to it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to film doing this because I don't have a way to hold this stupid phone and work. So I've tried to rig something up and it just didn't work. So I'm going to go ahead and get the thing attached and get it leveled up, and then I'll come back and show you what I did. Okay, we are, boy, I say okay a lot. We are attached to the wall. I've got 3 drywall screws in, one in this end wall over here, and 2 back here. And I've got a couple of wedges in the front of this. And I've used my 4-foot level to make sure that it's level in all directions. So the front's level, the back's level, and front to back is level. And I took these wedges and I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, and I drew a line on them. What I'm going to do is go down to the shop and I'm going to cut a little pad that thickness that's going to go underneath here. And I'm going to glue one side of it. So 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. All right, here they are installed. You can see one under there, the other one down there. And our next move is, now that we've got our base screwed to the wall and shimmed and leveled in all directions, now we're ready to start building our cabinet. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go out in the garage and break down some plywood and cut our bottom and cut our 2 sides. And we'll go from there. And of course, I almost forgot. You need to wrap the face of the cabinet base with whatever kind of wood you're using for your cabinets, or whatever you want to use. Here I use some recycled pine. So you can see how that goes. It's just got a 45 here at the corner. It's nailed and glued together. Nothing fancy. I'm sure you can figure out how I did that. So now we'll get on to building the base. Well, now we've got to break down our plywood. And I'm going to do this. This is actually the way I do this a lot of times. I've got a sheet of plywood here set up on a set of sawhorses, and I have the good face upside down. Because the tear out on a circular saw typically happens on the side that's facing up from where you're cutting. It's just the way that the blade comes out of the wood. So I put it face down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip this 27 3/4 inches wide. I'm going to do it freehand. I'm not going to use any fancy guides. And then I'm going to rough cut my panels, my 3 panels that I'm going to use for the bottom and the 2 sides for this cabinet out. And then we'll take them in the house and we'll put them together. And then we'll set them on our base. And we'll start getting that all, braced up and attached to the wall. And then we'll be able to start thinking about our face frame. All right, so here goes. So that's our plywood broken down. We'll be out here one more time because we've got to cut something for the center. as well. Maybe I'll just do that right now. All right, so we've got our plywood broken down, and we're going to go ahead and take this stuff in the bathroom that we're working on, and we're going to go ahead and screw it together and figure out what it takes to get it braced up to the wall. No doubt we're going to be cutting a little bit more lumber yet, but we'll get the bottom and the sides on, and hopefully we'll get the main structure built so this thing can so we can start working on the face frame. So we'll be back in a second. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to screw the side, the first side, onto the base, and it's going to go on this way. Okay, got the sides on. Now I need to get a board to put in the middle, and that middle board will be for the drawer slides and also for the middle divider and the face frame. So I'm going to have to go find a board, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I'll be right back. Okay, the parts that we have to install now are the middle brace inside the cabinet, and this ties the sides together as well as gives the face frame a place to attach, and it also gives us a place to attach the back of the cabinet to the wall, which we'll get to in a little bit later here. But the first thing we have to do is we have to get the dividers put in. And typically you would put just another full sheet, but I don't have another full sheet, so I'm going to just use these two pieces here, one on the front and one in the back, and there won't be anything in the middle, but that's not going to make any difference. And you can see I've already cut a notch in there. See that notch in the top? And that is going to receive one of these boards here. So got these two boards, and when this is all done, they sit in that notch in the top, and that's what ties the two sides together with the center divider. So I'm going to see if I can figure out a place to put this stupid camera so I can film myself doing this, and hopefully we can get that done. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so here is our base cabinet assembled and set in place. Now this is just temporary. I'm going to have to pull it back out to do a little bit more work on it. But you can see what we've done here. We attached the two sides, which you saw in the video. Fortunately, I wasn't able to video putting these middle boards in, but they're just screwed and glued right from the bottom. And I'm in a tight space here. It's hard to shoot footage. And then I showed there's a notch here, the top of this. So this will get attached here with a couple of screws, and the same in the back. That gives us a nice frame to attach our face frame to. So now we're going to have mounting points to put our face frame on. And really, the thing that you see in a cabinet is the face frame. These pieces of wood here that tie the top and sides together are just screwed. You can see the two screws there. They're just screwed through the sides. In this side, which is the only side of this cabinet that you'll see, I'm just going to fill all of these with some wood filler. And that'll give me an opportunity to show you how my grandpa used wood filler. And it's pretty common knowledge, but it's kind of cool, and it's something that I still do today. I guess the thing that I need to do now is in the back here, what I need to do is I need to have a board that's going to be here, a cleat that's going to go from this point to that point, and it's going to be glued to this. And what that'll do is that'll allow me to attach this cabinet to the wall. And I'll need to do the same thing over here. And once I get that in, then we'll be able to get a level out. And what we're going to do is we're going to shim this just the same way we shim the base. We're going to shim this structure until it's level. So it's plumb and level. So we're not going to worry about, how it looks against the walls or any of that, because we're going to address that when we do the face frame. We'll make the face frame tight to the wall. But for right now, we're really only concerned that this thing is plumb. And it should be level because we've leveled the base. I haven't stuck the level on it at this point, but I'm pretty confident it's going to be level. So then once we get those cleats put on, we'll be able to work on getting this thing attached to the wall. And we'll put 2 screws here in the back and 1 in the side, at least 1 in the side. And that'll make this thing strong. It will not rack after that's done. There's no way this thing can move. So even though the cabinet has no back, which would be a great big piece of plywood I'd have to put in here, the thing has no back on it. But once it's attached to the wall, it doesn't need a back, because that's where it's going to get its strength from. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make those cleats, and the next video will be, or the next segment here is going to be about securing this thing to the wall. Okay, cabinet secured to the wall. And you can see I've added a couple of things here. The one thing I did, as you can see on the back, I added that cleat that goes all the way across the back there. That allows me to attach the cabinet to the wall. And I also added this cross brace right here in the middle that ties the this middle partition together. Normally I would have used a full width board all the way across, but I didn't have the material, and this will work just fine. Just another way of doing the same thing. I've already attached it to the wall and to the base. The base is just attached with 4 screws, which you can probably see the little black dots there. And since I built the walls in this house, they are actually plumb. So I didn't need to shim the cabinet to get the cabinet plumb to the walls. So my base cabinet we leveled up, we put those shims in the front. And since the walls were plumb, it just bolted right up. And I've checked it with a level in all different directions. And it is in good shape. So we should be in a good place to start building the rest of this cabinet. Now I'm sure as you notice, this is totally different than the way most cabinets are built today. But this is more of the method that they used to build cabinets. Today they usually put backs on cabinets. They're just put together in a different manner. But this is kind of the old-fashioned way of building cabinets, and it's still a great method. The problem is it's just not really a method that's set up for factories. This is more of the kind of cabinet construction you do when you're building a cabinet on site in the house. The same way, as I've said before, the same way my grandpa would have done it. So our next video, we're going to talk about the face frame, and we're also going to make all the drawer fronts while we make the face frame, because then we'll have time to fit all those drawer fronts, and then we'll install the face frame on the cabinet. And then after that, we'll do a video on installing all the drawer slides and building the drawers. And the last project will be the countertop, which I'm going to have a good friend of mine make. He has a place called Classic Marble, And he does what's called cultured marble, which is like an epoxy and aggregate product, and it looks really good. He's been doing it for years. He does a great job, and that's what we're gonna have in here. I just wanted something in my. I don't have a whole lot in the house that he's done, and I just wanted a countertop that he made in my house. So, all right, that'll close this one up. Thanks.